Hello, good day everyone. I am Linyo Kinet Abok Pamisa and I'm going to do the oral video reporting, which is the 30 minutes. Chapter 2, Nationalism and Patriotism. Basic concepts of nationalism and patriotism. Nationalism is an ideology and movement defined by promoting the interests of a particular nation, in particular with the aim of acquiring and maintaining the nation's sovereignty over its country of origin. Nationalism claims that each nation should regulate itself, free from outside intervention, that a nation is natural and ideal political basis, and that the nation is the only legitimate source of political authority. It is also aims to build and maintain a single national identity based on shared social characteristics such as culture, language, religion, politics, and beliefs. In, distinct, in a distinctive shared history, and to promote national unity or solidarity. Nationalism, therefore, seeks to preserve and encourage a nation's traditional culture, and cultural revivals have been connected to nationalist movements. It it also foster pride in domestic accomplishments, and is strongly associated with patriotism. Nationalism is often paired with other ideologies, for instance conservatism or socialism. Types of nationalism. Nationalism can be expressed along civil, ethnic, cultural, religious, or ideological lines. These self-definitions of countries are used to classify distinct kinds of nationalism, although these categories are not mutually exclusive, and many nationalist movements combine to differing degrees some or all of these components. Number 1. Ethnic nationalism. Ethno-nationalism. The country is described from prior generations in terms of ethnicity and descent. It also involves the concepts of shared culture among group members, and generally a shared language. The nation's membership is hereditary. The state derives political legitimacy from its status as the ethnic group's homeland, and from its obligation to safeguard the partially domestic group, and as a group to promote its final and social life. In contrast to Western opinions of a country defined by its geographic territory, theorist Anthony D. Smith utilizes the word ethnic nationalism for non-Western notions of nationalism. The word ethno-nationalism is usually used only in relation to nationalists who support an explicit ideology along these lines. The more generic word is ethnic nationalism, and is issued by nationalists who hold such views in an informal, instinctive, or unsystematic manner. The pejorative type of both is ethnocentric nationalism or tribal nationalism, although tribal nationalism may have a non-pejorative significance when debating African, Native American, or other nationalisms that publicly claim a tribal identity. Number 2. Civil nationalism. The state derives political legitimacy from its citizens. Active involvement and the extent to which it reflects the will of the individuals. Civic nationalism. Civic nationalism lies within the traditions of nationalism and liberalism, but it is contrast with ethnic nationalism as a type of nationalism. Civic nation membership is regarded to be voluntary. The growth of representative democracy of nations such as United States and France was affected by civil national values. State nationalism, often coupled with ethnic nationalism, is a version of civic nationalism. It means that the country is a common community of those who contributed to the state's maintenance and strength, and that there is the person to contribute to the objective. The country is supposed to be a community of those who contribute to the state's maintenance and strength, and where the person exists expressly in the society to contribute to the objective. This often results in fascism, generally characterized by authoritarianism, and nationalism. Fascism is a political ideology. Number 3, expansionist nationalism, a radical form of imperialism that includes independent, patriotic feelings with a faith in expansionism, generally through military aggression. The word was coined in the late 19th century as European powers indulged in the scramble for Africa in the name of domestic glory, but was most closely linked with militarist governments in the 20th century, including fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, the Japanese Empire, and the Balkan nations of Albania, Great Albania, Bulgaria, Great Bulgaria, Croatia, Great Croatia, Hungary. Nations are not believed to be equivalent to their right to self-determination. Some countries are believed to possess features or qualities that make them superior to others. Therefore, expansionist nationalism argues the right of the state to expand its boundaries at the cost of its neighbors. Romantic nationalism. It is otherwise known as organic nationalism and identity nationalism. Is the form of ethnic nationalism in which the state derives political legitimacy as a result and expression of the nation's natural. It is based on the presence of a historical ethnic culture that meets the romantic ideal. It expressed romanticism's values and opposed the rationalism of Enlightenment, a historical ethnic culture that meets the romantic ideal was emphasized by romantic nationalism. Folklore evolved as a romantic nationalist notion. Number 5, cultural nationalism. The country is described by shared culture, not solely civic or ethnic. Chinese nationalism is an instance of cultural nationalism, partially due to China's many national minorities. Membership in the nation is neither completely voluntary nor hereditary. However, a traditional culture can be more readily integrated into the lives of any person, particularly if the person can obtain his or her abilities at an early point of his or her own lives. Cultural nationalism has been defined as a variety of non-civil or ethnic nationalism. Number 6, third world nationalism. Nationalist feelings are the outcome of opposition to colonial rule to survive and maintain a domestic identity. Number 7. Liberal nationalism. It is a kind of nationalism lately defended by political philosophers who think that a non-xenophobic form of nationalism compatible with liberal values of liberty, tolerance, equality, and individual rights can exist. Kim Lika, 1995, Miller, 1995, Tamir, 1993. It is asserted that in order to lead meaningful, independent life, people need a national identity, and those liberal democracies need domestic identity to work correctly. Liberal nationalists often defend the importance of domestic identity by stating that people need a domestic identity to lead meaningful, independent life, and that liberal democratic politics need domestic identity to work correctly. Ernest Renan, author of Koesikoon Nation, and John Stuart Mill are often thought to be early liberal nationalists. Number 8. Religious nationalism. Nationalism's connection to a specific religious faith, church, or affiliation. It can be seen that a shared religion contributes to a sense of domestic unity and mutual bond between the nation's people. This connection can be divided into two dimensions: religion's politicization and religion's converse effect on politics. In the former aspect, it can be seen that a shared religion contributes to a sense of domestic unity. A common bond contributes to a sense of domestic unity, a common bond between the nation's people, the support of a national identity comparable to a shared ethnicity, language, or culture is another political element of religion. More ideological is the impact of religion on politics, where present interpretations of religious concepts inspire political activism and action. For instance, legislation are enacted to encourage stricter religious adherence. Number 9. Pan-nationalism. Ethnic or cultural nationalism refers to a country that is itself a cluster or associated ethnic and cultural communities, such as Turkish peoples. Number 10. Diaspora nationalism. Diaspora is an ethnic population residing outside their traditional homelands. In this type of nationalism, there is a nationalist sense. The Irish in the United States, the Jews in the United States and elsewhere, and etc. Number 11. Stateless nationalism. On nationalist basis, the Catalans and Basques in Spain, an ethnic or cultural minority within a nation state, aims independence. Number 12. National conservatism. A political term mainly used in Europe to describe a version of conservatism that focuses more on domestic interests than conventional conservatism, while not being unduly nationalist or pursuing a far-right agenda. Number 13. Revolutionary nationalism. Revolutionary nationalism is an ideological theory that calls for a domestic group united by a shared sense of intent and destiny, also known as radical nationalism. It was first ascribed and strongly promulgated by Benito Mussolini to followers of revolutionary syndicalism in France and Italy at the start of the 20th century. This intellectual synthesis of radical nationalism and dissident society was created. Number 14. Left-wing nationalism. Left-wing nationalism, also sometimes referred to as a socialist nationalism, relatives to any political movement combining left-wing or socialism with nationalism. Notable examples include the 26 July movement of Fidel Castro, which launched the Cuban Revolutionary in 1959 to oust the American-backed Fulgencio Batista. Ireland's Sinn Féin, Israel's Labour Zionism, and the African National Congress. Patriotism. Patriotism, or national pride, is a sense of love, dedication, and attachment to a country and an alliance with other people who share the same impression. This attachment can be a mixture of many distinct emotions, including ethnic, cultural, political, or historical elements related to one's own country. It is a predominant virtue linked to a nation's love, with greater emphasis on values and beliefs. One who is patriotic will be willing to offer any sacrifices to his nation. He'll never live alone, egotistically, for example, for the sake of his life, for no other reason than being a citizen of that nation. Patriotism is a dedication to one's nation. In essence, patriotism is a sense of attachment and dedication to a country, nation, or political community, or just country love. The English word patriot is first known in the Elizabethan period. It originated from Latin 16th century patriota via Middle French, meaning countryman. Finally, from Greek patriotes, meaning from the same nation. Patris, meaning fatherland. Liddell and Scott, 2013. The abstract noun patriotism appears in the early 18th century. By adhering to a national religion, patriotism can be reinforced. This is the reverse of the church-state separation request by the Enlightenment intellectuals, who saw patriotism a religion as an analogous and opposing forces. Michael Billig and Jane Bethke Elstein both asserted that it is hard to discern the distinction between patriotism and faith, and depends heavily on the attitude of the person who does the label. Kinds of patriotism. Number 1, patriotism of duty. This includes fidelity to one's nation through material acts, This is military service, patriotism, and other selfless sacrifice sacrifice types. This is where patriotism becomes embodied and its ideals take praiseworthy particular actions. Number 2, patriotism of affection. This is the patriotism of the heart. It is about one's internal desire for his country's well-being. The patriotism of affection can be seen in the patriotism of duty, but it does not necessarily result in it. One can truly love his country and yet be a coward. Just one can theoretically fulfill a patriotic duty and yet feel apathetic about the country's welfare. Number 3, patriotism of manners. This is customs patriotism. Written and unwritten, the patriotism of manners is to place one's hand over the heart during the national anthem. It can be performed by anyone without actually needing affection or duty patriotism, while the above type of patriotism show, at least in part, of the real beliefs and hopes of a person. The patriotism of manners establishes mostly a set of protocols. So there are three kinds of patriotism. One is patriotism of duty. Number 2 is patriotism of affection. Number 3 is patriotism of manners. And this is the types of patriotism. And the first one is the kinds of patriotism. There are three kinds of patriotism. Patriotism duty, patriotism of affection, patriotism of manners. And this is types of patriotism. Number 1, personal patriotism is emotional and voluntary. The patriot adheres to certain patriotic values, such as respect for the flag or the honoring of veterans. Other expressions of personal patriotism include enlisting in the army, public service, and participation in the political process through voting or other forms of activism. Official patriotism, promoted by the government, which has a high symbolic and ceremonial content. It is a logical consequence of the state itself, which derives legitimacy from being the expression of the common good of the political community. National monuments and veterans' days and commemoration ceremonies are typically examples. Often, official patriotism is highly regulated by the protocol, with specific methods for handling flags or a specific pledge and displays for allegiance. Official patriotism relies heavily on symbolic acts, such as displaying the flag, singing the national anthem, saying a pledge, participating in a mass rally, placing a patriotic bumper sticker on one's vehicle, or any other way of publicly proclaiming allegiance to the state. Number 3, symbolic patriotism. In wartime, is intended to raise morale, in turn contributing to the war effort. Number 3 is in wartime is intended to raise morale, in turn contributing to the war effort. Number 4, peacetime patriotism cannot be so easily linked to a measurable gain for the state, but the patriot does not see it as as inferior. Levels of patriotism vary across time and among political communities. Typically, patriotic intensity is higher when the state is under external threat. So there are 4 types of patriotism. One is personal patriotism. Number 2, official patriotism. Number 3, symbolic patriotism. Number 4, peacetime patriotism. And difference between patriotism and nationalism. While the terms patriotism and nationalism were once regarded as synonymous, distinct connotations were assumed. While both are people's feelings of affection for their nation, the values on which they are based are very distinct. Patriotism feelings are based on the country's positive values, like liberty, justice, and equality. The patriot thinks that both their country's state system and individuals are inherently good and working together to achieve a better quality of life. On the other hand, nationalism emotions are based on the belief that one's nation is superior to all others. It also holds a connotation of other countries' distrust or disapproval, leading to the premises that other states are competitors. While patriots do not degrade other countries automatically, nationalists do sometimes, to the point of calling for the global dominance of their country. Nationalism is the polar opposite of globalism by its protectionist beliefs. Historically, both positive and negative have been the impacts of nationalism. While it has motivated movements of autonomy, such as Zionist movement that formed contemporary Israel, it was also a main factor in the increase of the German Nazi Party and the Holocaust. Longley, 2019. According to Sidney G. Harris, the patriot is proud of his nation for what it does, and the nationalist is proud of his nation whatever it does. The first approach generates a sense of accountability, and the second, a sense of blind stupidity leading to war. So, there are 14 types of nationalism. Number 1 is ethnic nationalism. Number 2 is civic nationalism. Number 3 is expansionist nationalism. Number 4, romantic nationalism. Number 5, cultural nationalism. Number 6, Third World War nationalism. Number 7, liberal nationalism. Number 8, religious nationalism. Number 9, pan-nationalism. Number 10, diaspora nationalism. Number 11, stateless nationalism. Number 12, national conservatism. Number 13, revolutionary nationalism. Number 14, left-wing nationalism. And there are 3 kinds of patriotism, which is patriotism of duty. Number 2, patriotism of affection. Number 3, patriotism of manners. And these are there are 4 types of patriotism. Personal patriotism. Number 2, official patriotism. Number 4, symbolic patriotism. And number 3, symbolic patriotism. Number 4, peacetime patriotism. And that is my 30-minute oral video reporting.